Welcome to the Purpose Driven Investor Podcast, a show focused on the people behind the deals, the values that drive them, and the impact they're creating through real estate and entrepreneurship. Today's guest is a real estate investor, operator, and founder of Onnix Investments, a company built around off-market deal flow through deep agent relationships and fast execution. Started as a real estate agent, turned into wholesaling, and over the last few years has built a strong team and scaled his business, even hitting six-figure months by building systems and mastering his approach. On today's show, we're going to talk about his path into real estate, the lessons learned, and scaling and team building, and practical insights for any investors looking to grow with intention and with focus. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Thanks, man. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think you offer a very unique approach to the real estate business. And I think there's a lot that I can learn and a lot that everybody that's listening can learn. So let's start first with your origins and your early mindset. So tell us about where you grew up and how you first got introduced into real estate.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, a town of like 1,200 people. And I was kind of a troublemaker in high school, right? I hated school. I'd do anything I could to get out of it. And the main reason being, I just hated sitting there. But I was always a very hard worker. So I was working from a very young age. I was always trying to start little businesses. But school just never clicked for me. And I remember one time, my mom called me. I was at work. It was probably my junior or senior year. And she was freaking out because she saw my ACT score, right? And the ACT score, for those of you that don't know, it's basically the test you got to take to get into different colleges, right? And I literally bubbled in every single answer on that test. And that was kind of the moment where everybody realized that college probably wasn't for me. And then fast forward a little bit, I moved down to Arizona about a month after I turned 18. And I got into pools because I eventually wanted to start a pool company. That seemed pretty cool at the time. And as I was working for this pool company, the owner was probably in his 60s, and I noticed that every time somebody would call out sick, he had to go out and actually clean the pools himself. And I was like, I don't want to be doing this till I'm 60. And knowing what I know now, if the business was built a little bit differently, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. But at the time, I didn't know that, and I'm like, there's no way I want to do this. So I jumped into real estate. As a real estate agent, I'm like, I'm going to get super rich super quick, make a ton of money really fast. And that couldn't have been further from the truth, because my biggest issue was what they call shiny object syndrome. So what I was doing for those few years that I was a real estate agent, although I was making some money, it wasn't as good as it could have been because I was bouncing around, right, to different businesses every few months. So I Amazon FBA, drop shipping, like you name a business, I had probably thought about it or I had started it. And so I wasn't seeing success because I kept losing momentum every few months, right?
That's incredible. I can't imagine just thinking even like moving to a new city at 18, trying to figure out life. Imagine that in itself was a big challenge, right?
It really was. And the biggest, I wanted to move back probably about every day for the first 6 months, right? Because I didn't know anybody out here in Arizona. I didn't have any family. I was trying to meet friends. But the thing that held me back here, I just didn't want to go back with my tail between my legs. So I'm kind of stubborn. So I just stuck it out. And that was probably the best decision that I made was sticking it out and staying down here. That's
awesome. How long have you been there now?
I'm coming up on seven years in July.
That's huge. That's great. Well, all right, talk about a little more about the first job in real estate and how did that shape how you view the industry and where you're at now?
Yeah, my first job in real estate as an agent was awesome. It was my first little taste in real estate. I had a great mentor, Kelly Cook, so he taught me a lot about sales, a lot about real estate. But I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do forever. I was having to chase around clients. I was having to go show houses on the weekends, do open houses. And I had heard about wholesaling, quite a few different times. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. And I knew that I wanted to invest in real estate at some point. And with wholesaling, you get access to all of these off-market deals and can purchase them yourself or go and wholesale the ones that don't make sense. So when I started Onnix Investments, we asked a simple question. what do most homeowners do when they decide that they want to sell their house, right? They go directly to a realtor. So that's what we did. Instead of going and chasing all these sellers around, we decided to go out to these agents and be a cash offer resource for them. So now we call and text agents and have a massive pipeline of these agents that we follow up with on a monthly basis, and in turn they bring us these off-market properties that we make cash offers on.
Love that. We're going to get into some more detail around Onnix in a second, but let's talk a little more about your early success. Tell us about maybe one of the real early successes that you had, and really gave you a look into what real estate could be. I
got pretty lucky in my opinion. When I first started the wholesaling company, I kind of burned the boats. I was like, I'm going all in on this. I'm not going to touch anything else. And I got a deal within my first 30 days and I made $10,000.
That's huge.
Like, holy cow. I'm like, if I can do this once, I can keep repeating it. And the next month I didn't have a deal, but then the month after I made another $10,000. So I'm like, let's keep doing this. Like, I was glad I burned the boats, and obviously it was super tough starting any business, like lots of ups and downs. But once I got the hang of it, things were really clicking.
Love it. That's great. What sparked your transition from agent to wholesaling? You touched on it a little bit earlier, but let's dive into that a little bit more, and what eventually led to creating your current company, Onnix Investments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the main thing was about real estate investing. I wanted to be a big investor in real estate, do fix and flips. So that was kind of the primary reason. And then as I started the company and started doing this, I realized that this can actually be a massive company. Right. I'm like, this can make a lot of freaking money, and I can eventually get it to the point where I'm not even involved in the company at all. So that was kind of the biggest thing for me. So I'm really glad I burned the boats and kind of went all in with it.
That's great. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest challenge been going all in early on? I mean, I imagine your challenges are different now, but early on, what was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I remember I was sitting in my car late one night, and I was working out of one of my friend's offices. He has a car dealership and had a spare office, so I'd go and work out of there. And I was leaving. It was late one night, and I was like sitting in my car, kind of questioning everything because the income wasn't consistent yet. I was spending a little bit of money, not a ton, but I was working so hard, working so many hours, and kind of the hourly rate that I was essentially making was nothing, pretty much. And I was like, is this worth it? Should I quit? Maybe I can go get a different job, a sales job somewhere else, or maybe go bartend. And I was sitting there contemplating it, and I was like, you're going to regret that for the rest of your life if you don't stick to this. So just decided to stick it out and continue going with it. And if anybody else that's watching this is in a similar position, starting out a company, I found out that almost every single business owner goes through a similar phase like that. So you are not alone. And if you just stick to it and keep pushing, you're going to come out the other side, a way better person, and hopefully making a lot more money.
I like that. And I think it applies, that mentality applies not only to early on, right, but probably at different stages throughout your company, right? There's days early on when you're like, hey, I got to keep pushing, right? Well, then what's your next goal? And then how do you push to that next goal, right?
Exactly. And there's, that stuff comes up all the time, right? I remember when I was hiring, I was like, it'd probably be easier if I just cut the office overhead and they just kept working for myself, right? So you come across different hurdles and roadblocks like that all the time, but you stick with them because long term it's going to be the most beneficial. Because I could have stopped hiring, fired everybody, got rid of the office, and then went and worked for myself and made pretty decent money, but long term that's not where I want to be. I'm going to be stuck in a job and not necessarily a business for the rest of my life.
Yep. That's great. How did you identify the agent-centric model that you use now? I think that, again, as I made an introduction, I think that's a very niche business, very unique spin on wholesaling, on real estate investing.
So my mentor, Austin Zabak, he has a massive wholesaling company here in Scottsdale. So I learned just about everything I know from him on the wholesaling side of the business, and kind of they have a very similar business model. So I just kind of copied and pasted what they were doing over there.
Okay, that's great. So talk about your process. How do you reach out to agents? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have a couple different ways we do it. Three ways in specific. Number one being just cold calling random agents. Number two, we send out mass text to these agents and get them to respond, and then we'll pick up the phone and call them once they respond. And then number three, which is one of my favorites, is calling about active listings that these agents have, because cold calling and cold texting, right? It's kind of a warm lead because you're reaching out, essentially as a buyer, right? So a lot of times they're still receptive. But when you call on a listing, you actually have something to talk about, right? You're not just giving them some pitch. You're actually getting to ask questions about the house and maybe building a little bit more rapport than you would otherwise.
That's great. And your value proposition to them to say, hey, bring me the deal instead of listing it, or let me buy this listing that's been stagnant for a while. What's the value proposition?
We want to be the tool in their tool belt, right? So anytime they come across foreclosures or homes with tax liens, probate situations, our goal is to just be that cash offer resource and the tool in their tool belt, right? And a lot of agents there's two different type of agents that we see for the most part, right? Number one being that they don't necessarily know what to do with these investment properties. So they have these leads coming in from Google or cold calling, whatever it may be, and they see that the house is trashed, or maybe they have to be out in a week, and some of these realtors are like, I don't know exactly what to do with this, right? And so we would come in and be like, hey, let's get you paid, and this will be the easiest transaction you have ever done, and you're going to get paid in 2 weeks versus having to list a house and then do a 30-day closing. And then the second type of agent is the agent that's a little bit more seasoned and knows what to do with these houses, and then they have a small investor list, and they'll typically add that to us, and then we have to get a bit more competitive when those kinds of properties come in, because they're getting sent out to several other investors.
Got it. That's great. How do you compare? Open Door is clearly doing this similar at scale, right? Maybe not outreaching like you are, but I think they have a path where agents can propose to their clients to sell through Open Door. Is that right?
They do. Yeah. I remember I was an agent and I would submit properties on Open Door. The best thing about working with, a smaller guy like us, nothing wrong with Open Door or any of these other big companies, but it's, essentially a lot of money going back into the local economy, right? Local crews for our flippers, local people that live here. And then our communication is top notch. You're not dealing with some massive corporation. We treat you like a VIP client.
Love that. Okay. Let's talk about team building and scaling your revenue. You've talked about hiring and how you've hired people so that you can eventually maybe get out of the business, or at least not working so much in the business. Talk about what's your process in hiring people and why it mattered, and how that fundamentally has changed your business.
Yeah, so I think people are everything in this business, right? They're the hardest part about the business, but they will also make you the most money. And we have a pretty in-depth hiring process, in my opinion. But step number one, we get recruits coming in from Indeed or Instagram, wherever they come in from. And then we'll do a 15-minute phone interview with these people, right? Just asking some simple qualifying questions. But my favorite question that we ask them is about some of their past job history. And we ask them who their last 3 to 5 bosses are, right? And we have them spell out their bosses' names. And then we ask them how that boss is going to rate them when we actually talk to that boss, right? You'd be surprised at how many candidates, like, all of a sudden don't remember their boss from 6 months ago, or they say their boss is going to rate them poorly, and then it just opens up a whole can of worms. So that weeds out a ton of people just by asking that simple question right there. And then if they pass that phone interview, then we bring them in for an office interview where we go a little bit more in depth. And that's typically about 20 to 30 minutes of us asking them questions. And then I like to open it up and pretty much let them interview us for the second half of the interview.
Got it. That's great. What qualities are you looking for when you do those interviews?
I think drive is the biggest one. There's somebody that has a good work ethic, because I can train everything else, right? I prefer some sales skills before coming in, but that's not a huge thing because I can train on all of that. I just need to see that they have a good work ethic and a good drive, and they can stick to something when it gets hard.
That's important for sure.
And I'd say my biggest thing when I first started scaling and hiring people wasn't necessarily the deals. It was the people, right? Because I always wanted to be the cool boss in a sense, right? I wanted everybody to like me. So people would take advantage of that. So if you're just starting to hire, even if you only have one employee, make sure you set standards, because I didn't really have standards in place. I'm like, hey, go start making cold calls and do this, right? And people would take advantage of that and be lazy and wouldn't show up on time. And so it wasn't until I implemented what we call our performance accountability system that, some good results started to actually show up.
Yeah, got to hold them accountable, right?
Exactly.
And look at the metrics to prove that, hey, you are doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
All right, that's great. So talk about how building a team allowed you to scale your revenue, and you talked about a 6-figure month. How's a team really enabling that for you?
So it's been kind of like a game in my eyes. Like I kind of gamify the business. So when I first started out, it was just myself. And then after that, I hired a transaction coordinator who could handle the paperwork. Then the next step was hiring an actual sales team and getting those people in place. But I was still doing sales myself, right? And then late last year, I finally got out of the sales completely, where I'm just jumping into a managerial role. So now I'm managing these people and coaching them full time. I'm focused on hiring. So that was an awesome feeling, being able to get out of sales and seeing my guys bring in enough revenue where I don't have to do sales anymore. Right. And it was funny. Something that happened, kind of a good lesson for some people here, is when I switched into a managerial role, coming from sales, my calendar was really stacked and blocked in like 60 to 90 minute increments. And so when I jumped into the manager side of things, I was just dealing with constant fires all day, every day. Right. And then I was starting to get really burnt out, and I couldn't figure out why in the moment. And it made me realize that burnout doesn't always come from too much work. Sometimes it comes from a lack of structure, because I then had to go and organize my day in 60 to 90 minute blocks, even as a manager. And that kind of cured it.
Love that, because there's lots of days I feel that way, where it's like, man, I mean, today as an example, I have 10 meetings on my calendar. It's like, dang, that's a lot of meetings, right? So talk more about how you block your time.
Everything is in the calendar. If it's not in the calendar, it's not happening, right? I have my wake up time, I have my drive time to and from the gym, I have getting into the office. Because if I don't have that, and I have a lot of white space in my calendar, like me personally, I will bounce around. I'll try and fill it with random crap. I'll context switch and do something different every 10 minutes. So I have my day blocked out, and typically I have like a lot of deep work and CEO work in the morning, because that's when I'm freshest. And then the afternoon I reserve for meetings. Okay,
that's great. All right, let's talk. That kind of leads us into a bit of the mindset and growth lessons. You talked a bit about the shiny object syndrome. How have you managed now to avoid that and really to focus in?
That's a great question. What really comes to mind when talking about that is thinking about different things and our unfocused thinking. So I go deer hunting every single year. Right, I go back up to Nebraska and we hunt in the sandhills. And when you're out there looking for, a big buck, it's like all you're thinking about all day, every day, right? And after a couple of days, something weird starts to happen, right? Everything starts to turn into a buck. So the rocks, the trees, the shadows, you start seeing these bucks everywhere. And it made me realize that business and life are essentially the same thing. Whatever you focus on long enough, your mind's going to create evidence to justify that focus. So if you're constantly thinking about negative stuff or thinking about what you don't have, your mind will create that evidence, and you'll start seeing why you don't have this. So people really underestimate how dangerous that unfocused thinking really is.
Man, that's powerful. I love that analogy right there. It's like, man, you want a buck, you focus on a buck, right? You want to win in business, you focus on winning, right? And that's huge.
Yeah.
All right. What advice do you wish that you could give to your younger self? Let's say the 18-year-old that has just moved. What do you wish you could have told that person?
Don't drink. So I would drink quite a bit, even after I started Onnix Investments, right? I was drinking almost every single day, and it was essentially just to numb something, right? I was bored, wanted to numb something. It was easy. So if I could give that advice to my 18-year-old self, I would say to stop drinking, right? Because I gave up drinking about a year and a half ago, and it completely changed my trajectory, right? I didn't realize, I don't think it was ever a problem, but it was just constantly chasing comfort and chasing easiness every single night. So as soon as I gave up drinking and raised my standards, everything kind of started to take off.
That's great. That's great. What mindset shift had helped you most in scaling your business?
Discipline. Just staying disciplined and following the calendar has been the biggest thing. And talking about comfort a little bit more, the biggest issue that I see with a lot of people nowadays is they're constantly chasing comfort. So they're staying up late watching Netflix, they're sleeping in, they're not going to the gym, they're having a couple drinks at night, they're eating McDonald's instead of eating clean, which all that stuff is hard to do in the moment, but it feels really good. It's really easy in the moment, but long term it's bad for you, right? And that made me realize that in order to be successful in business, I'm going to have to deal with a lot of discomfort and a lot of pain. And if you're constantly chasing comfort outside of work and outside of business, that's definitely going to translate over into your business and into work.
Love it. Love it. What's success mean to you today?
My perspective on that's definitely shifted a lot in the last 2 years since getting married. Before, all I determined success on was simply just money, right? And then I met my now wife, and we got married last year. So my perspective changed a lot more. And success to me, it has a lot to do with family and happiness and fulfillment now. And it's not just all about chasing dollars anymore.
Got it. All right. Well, we talked a bit about success. Let's talk about your goals for 2026. Have you set some goals? What are you trying to achieve this year in business and personally? Yeah,
absolutely. My two biggest personal goals this year, I'm going to read 50 books and then go on 50 podcasts. And then for business, we want to hit $1 million in revenue this year, right? We have a team trip planned. We're going to go to San Diego if all the sales guys can get us to $1 million in revenue.
That's great. That's great. I love how you made that little bit of switch. You said, I want to read 50 books. And you said, no, I'm going to read 50 books, right? That's a back to mindset. That's cool. Yep. How many deals you got to do $1 million in revenue?
So I believe it's about 66 on and we're bumping our average deal size up. So our average deal size last year was just under 10,000, but we're building out the disposition arm of our company, which in turn is going to raise the average deal size to hopefully about $15,000 this year. So I believe it's right at 66 deals.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's achievable for sure. Right.
Definitely is. And we did, mid 40s last year. So we're already going to be 2/3 of the way there. If we just get the average deal size up. So it's really not too much more of a stretch.
Yeah, that's great. What's the one book that you're looking forward to reading the most that you got on your list? Do you have one?
There's a new one I just ordered by Jefferson Fisher. I listened to his podcast the other day, and I think it's like Argue Less, Talk More.
Okay.
So it's all about communication and stuff. So I'm really excited to dive into that one. A couple good books that I love if you're just getting started in your journey, right? Whether you're starting a business or just getting started in a new sales role. The number one being How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's just a classic. That's a great one. And then Jocko Willink has two great books that I revisit, typically every year. Extreme Ownership and then The Dichotomy of Leadership.
Awesome. Appreciate that. All right, let's do some rapid fire here and we'll close up. What's the biggest lesson that real estate has taught you?
Stay consistent. Don't chase shiny objects.
Got it. What's one habit that you credit your success on?
Going to the gym, right? If you can build that discipline and build that muscle to wake up early and go to the gym every single day, that's going to translate over into everything else.
Got it. All right. What's purpose-driven investing mean to you?
What does purpose-driven investing mean to you? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, like what's your purpose? Like when you think about your purpose, you talked a little bit about it earlier. For me, as I think about what I do every day, day in and day out, on the in the manufactured housing, mobile home world, my purpose really is: can I show people's God's love through affordable housing? And if I can do that, then I can be successful, right? And that comes to life in many different ways and how I interact with people and such. But that's really what I'm driving to day. Long term, of course, there's retirement and setting myself up for success and my kids and family and such. But
yeah, no, mine is number one, providing for my family, but also providing for my entire team. I love seeing them make more money than they've ever made before, and I want to create several millionaires just by working here at Onnix.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, talk to us about where can people find and connect with you online.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at Jaben _Makings. And you guys can message me. I'm always happy to answer questions. I have a ton of free content on there talking about business and mindset and real estate.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jaben, I appreciate you joining and sharing your story, sharing a bit about your business, your family. It was awesome. And for you guys that are listening, feel free to reach out. I'm sure Jaben would love to hear from you. Get a message from me on Instagram. Thank you for joining.